Hi, everybody. At Skating PJ here for three turn three for Skate Ontario with, wait, there's only Mazin. Mazin, where's Charlene?
Oh my goodness. Charlene is on a jet plane as we speak. She's on a
I know,
jet
lucky
plane
her.
to sun and fun in Miami, Florida, celebrating a girls' trip. So we are thinking of her. We're missing her. We're a little jealous, but you know
A
what?
lot jealous.
Yeah,
A lot jealous. Let's face
a lot
facts.
jealous. Exactly. I know. How are you?
I am well. And this is
Great.
going to be such a great episode because we're going to be talking about all things coaching. And Lord knows I was a coach, well, since before ice was invented. I know our two guests very well. One from the time he was a competitor, and my mom used to prejudge him in ice dance, to sort of help out. And the other one I coached with at my very first coaching job at the University Skating Club. And of course, you and I coached together. And what people don't know about coaching is that it's a very complex kind of job. So, talk to me a tiny bit about coaching, and then we're going to get into our Skate Ontario news and then into talking with our guests.
Boy, oh boy, oh boy. Sometimes you have to ask yourself the question, how did I get myself involved in this? I mean, you love the sport as a skater yourself. And then lo and behold, all of a sudden, one day you are nurturing and coaching and managing and, producing young athletes to the best of their abilities. And before you know it, all of a sudden, the time flies. And, I will say this now, and I will also say it as we introduce our two guests. But I'm quite sure that between the four of us, we've got well over 100 years of coaching experience between the four of us, and that's
And
just
it only
phenomenal
feels
when
like
you
a
really.
thousand.
Yeah, yeah, exactly, right. I know, yeah, but you know what? We'll soon get to them. Skate Ontario news. Let's do it.
Okay.
So last
Let,
week, of course,
yep.
was World Team Trophy being held in Japan, and the United States took away the gold medal for the team, and then South Korea was second, and then Japan was third. Canada ended up being able to, unfortunately, place sixth, okay, at the World Team Trophy. So it wasn't their best showing, but nonetheless, we had some new team members, to the event, and some of the athletes, had a little bit of struggle as they were, out there to compete. We in Skate Ontario had four competitors: Piper and Paul, Maddie Skizis, and Stephen Gogolev. And Maddie probably had one of her personal best skates for the short program, which was fantastic for her. Piper and Paul had two really great skates, and I think you would agree with me on that. Yeah,
Yeah.
and Stephen, you know what? Still kind of figuring out his footing under pressure, of course. Dealing with the fact that, yeah, I mean, as Charlene once said, the kid's grown like 10 feet, in such a short period of time. But you know what? Nonetheless, he tried his best in the free program and was able to do and successfully do, a couple of quad jumps. So good for him. Hopefully that he'll take that back home when he trains and, just be ready for next season.
Okay. Two thoughts. I will always be Team Piper and Paul, Piper Gillis and Paul Poirier. As I've talked about in other places at other times, it actually doesn't matter what the results are. What matters is the fact that they have produced so many different programs that I will remember over time, and that's really the sort of important thing to consider here is that in 10 years' time, will I remember the results of the podium? No, not necessarily. And I said the same thing about Tessa Virtue and Scott Moyer, but I sure remember the performances and the creativity. I think that Skate Canada got it right when they mentioned in their press release post the event that this was an event for experience. So not only we talk about Stephen Gogolev, a young man with enormous talent. So not only is this an experience, but it's also building on the competitive experience that the skaters couldn't really gain over the last 3 years because of the pandemic. So we'll see what happens, but that's putting that Skate Ontario news where the team trophy is concerned to bed. So,
That
Mazin, there's something else that you wanted to talk about, I think, that just was happening last weekend.
Yeah, last weekend, Skate Ontario hosted their high performance athletes at the Nottawasaga Inn Skate Ontario supports the quest for gold. So these athletes were young athletes that competed at the pre-novice and novice level, and they competed at the challenge event. So they were all selected and invited to participate at the Nottawasaga Inn. And one of the things that they, were taught is media and how to speak, how to deal with. And I think that you can actually, maybe contribute a little bit to that because of your knowledge too with National Week, National Training Seminar Week as well. So what do you think? I think that's great.
I think it's amazing. I've done lots of media training over time for lots of athletes in different sports, not just skating. And it's one of the most valuable skills that you can give young people because young people believe that if a grown up asks them a question, then they have to answer. So, our job as media trainers is to help them to understand that they, just because a question is posed of them, they do not have to answer. And there are strategies for getting around it. So, and also just making them more comfortable because it's not always easy. So, couple of quick things. We will have on thin ice a little bit later on, and it's a coaching question. And if you want to get in on the chat, make sure that you leave your questions or comments in the comment window below, and we will try and get to as many of them as possible. Okay, Mazin, take it away. This is your show, my friend. Coaching, coaching, coaching.
My show. That's right. Listen, we, PJ and I, and our absentee, member Charlene is very happy to welcome, two great people, two great coaches here in Skate Ontario. David is the director or co-owner of the Mariposa Skating School, and Colleen Melanson, the convener of the provincial level skating out of the Milton Skating Club. So welcome to both of you to the show. Thank you for being here.
So good to see you.
Thank you so much. Listen, I'm going to start it off. So, like I said at the top of the show, I think that between the four of us, we've probably got well over 100 years of coaching experience under our belt. So my first question, has a follow-up as well, but to both of you, how did you get involved in this? How did you fall into this? And with that being said, since you've been doing this for so many years, tell us something that you have just been so happy to have this opportunity to have this as your career. Dave, let's start with you.
Oh, well, I could go back to when I got off the boat in 1966. And my family, we were living in Toronto. And of course, that was the year of the Maple Leafs' last Stanley Cup win. And my father, we were immigrants, and my father thought, oh, there's something going on here with the hockey. So he put me in hockey. Well, I sucked. I couldn't skate. So the following year, he decided, because he saw the figure skaters that were on before or after us, that we should figure skate. Not something I really endorsed as a 7-year-old, but that kind of put me on a pathway to skating. Being in skating and growing up and going to school was never really my intent to be a coach. I was going to university. I was doing chemical engineering. I was doing other things. And I was actually judging because I was earmarked to be a high performance judge for Skate Canada, or the CFSA back then. And I was at sectionals in Orangeville, and a fellow judge from Barrie, Suzanne Morgan, said, "Hey, we need a partner for our test day. Can you come up?" And that was kind of the beginning of the end of my judging. And then I started coaching.
Wow.
But it all started, and you have to understand, my father, who was Pakistani and then went to England, met my mom in England, and then we came to Canada. Like, hockey and figure skating were nothing on his radar. He was an immigrant, and he was looking to be a part of the Canadian culture. And here I am. If he hadn't made that choice, if the Leafs had not won the Stanley Cup in 1967, I wouldn't be here today.
See, it's all about that. Oh my God!
And I'm still waiting.
Yeah, exactly.
Begs the question. Can I just ask a question, David? You arrived, and then there hasn't been a Stanley Cup since. Correlation? I'm not sure.
It's on me.
Oh my gosh! And Colleen, tell us your story.
Well, my story isn't as colorful as that. Um, you know what? Honestly, I didn't put a pair of skates on until I think I was 11 years old. And basically, my cousin was going for skating lessons, and my parents said, "You should too. We live in Canada. Everyone should know how to skate." So I didn't take my first private lesson until I think I was 12. My sister, my brother, and my other sister, my younger sister, 12 years younger than me, came along. And my career was a whole 5 years, maybe. And theirs lasted much longer. My youngest sister, obviously, was the longest. She started when she was 3. Um, I ended up skating all through high school. And then through high school, I thought I was going to get into marketing or advertising. I wanted to go into business. But, you know, back in the day, you met with your guidance counselor and filled
Oh,
out
yeah.
those lovely questionnaires that showed you where you fit best. And through all of that, the coaching course at Seneca had just opened, I think the year before. And that's where I ended up going, met some of my best friends, continued skating a little bit through that. And I have been in coaching ever since. So, pretty boring story compared to some, but that's how I ended up there.
Not
No,
at
no
all. Not
story is
boring even
boring.
a little bit.
Yeah.
No, I think so. You know what? That was an amazing program, actually.
Yeah.
Back in its day, that was a really amazing program. And that's actually kind of almost a follow up into my next question about coaching courses and what we learn in school in our coaching courses, and then what we actually learn on the ice, and then what we learn actually talking to other skating coaches. Because I can only speak from personal experience that as I appreciated all of the national coaching, certification program courses that I took, at the same time, there was nothing more valuable than just talking to other coaches that have been doing this for longer periods of time than I have at the beginning. And that being said, I feel like we almost always had that person in our corner, that mentor. And I'm just wondering, Colleen, was there anybody that you thought, was just that person for you?
Oh, 100%. And you know exactly who it was. It was my coach. She and our family have so many very quirky connections, but in truth, she is a woman that many, many, many times I found myself in situations and I thought, how would she handle it? And honestly, I found my way through many situations, not just at the rink, through coaching, obviously, but in many personal things. And she still is in my life. Um, yeah, I I guess my biggest moment in coaching would be if ever anyone could say that I emulated her, for sure. Yeah.
Who was that, Colleen?
Pat to Oakhurst.
Oh, of course.
Oh,
Strong, strong, strong lady.
Oh,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
how about you,
Absolutely. And
David?
Dave?
Uh, well, as I expressed earlier, I just kind of fell into the coaching, and I was just partnering dances, mainly up here in Barrie at the Barrie Skating Club, and at Mariposa. And I think it was after the Olympics in 1988, which I did not uh, have anyone there. I was just a dance partner at the time. Doug Lee, who was the founder and owner and operator of the Mariposa School of Skating, pulled me into his office and he looked at me and he said, "I want this to be more than just a single center." And we had a brief conversation. Um, and that was the beginning of it for me. I had the support. I obviously had the infrastructure with a skating school like Mariposa at my fingertips, and that was the beginning of it for me as far as having the opportunity. Doug really provided me with that opportunity, and someone like Greg Miles, who was the head coach of the Barrie Skating Club, was very supportive as well. So professionally, that was it. But I drew upon a lot of coaches that I had, much like Colleen with Pat, and I took for many years from Ken and Paul at Ormsby, and they were just they're still important in my life. They at the time they were coaches in Scarborough.